Hi guys, Tuko here with a new video, and this video will be not really a negative one, but I have initial concerns about RPGs, and I'll have also solutions. So I'm not going to doom, I'm going to also bring a solution to the table. It has nothing to do with the maps, so my feedback for maps will be coming once I have done the Brawl with the Blues. It's Saturday for us, midnight. We will have a Brawl with the Blues for 2 hours, so I will hopefully play with every single map, and see how it will go. But I wanted to actually discuss about my concerns just with systemic and like the MMR issues and the levers and whatever. I want to go point by point and see if we can actually have a solution behind it. Now, there is a few concerns that has actually nothing to do with SOLOQ RBG, it just has to do with the brackets that is already existing, the team RBG bracket. And I already talked about it for a whole video, but I'm going to say it shortly. It is not the problem of SOLOQ RBG that team RBG is going to die. If it dies and you have no populations anymore, the player base just decides what is interesting for them. And I want also to remind you guys that solo queue is not a worse game mode in PvP. It is not a unskilled game mode in PvP. It is not a easy mode in PvP. That's not true. I will make a video about it to actually talk about the skill behind SOLOQ RBG, behind Solo Shuffle even, and I'm gonna talk about it in the next video. But let's talk about the concerns, the initial concerns I have with RBGs, and I'm going to give you potential solutions behind it. You will see some gameplay at the background. It is me playing on my Retribution. Already made the video, but I have to show something so you don't get bored. And if you haven't seen that video, at least you have it right now. But pretty much my concern with MMR. So how is it going to affect MMR? How is it going to reward people with MMR? How is it going to separate players from their own team if you're winning? I think MMR currently with team RBGs, if you have like all the same MMR and you have all the same CR, so the gains should be the same. So it means that if I win with you, we gain 150 points regardless of our output, input, everything that is combined onto the RBG, which I think for a solo queue RBG environment, you should be rewarded by doing a lot. Now, again, it's very hard to reward it because, again, is base defending bad? Is it like doing nothing? That's not really true, right? If you're defending a node and you're keeping that node safe and you always take that node, well, you should be rewarded for that because you actually got at least one of those nodes in your team. I think being active and retaking a node, so stealing a node, should also be rewarded. I think also defending from people that are taking your node, so instead of letting them take it and then retake it to get more points, I think defending should also be rewarded. But offensively, also doing more DPS is also and should be rewarded. I think killing 1v1, 1v2 should also be rewarded. I think healers that are healing correctly and they're like making their team not die, so there is a death counter, for example, should also be rewarded because you are the reason why people are not dying in the, like team fights in other areas of the game. So now, what can you do? Do you want to separate players within a team, or do you want to reward everyone so it is a team-based effort? The problem is I'm a bit scared about, like, let's say people are going AFK in solo queue RPGs, but again, I think the MMR system is there to actually like cut the bad grass off, and if people actually have like a big oversight, like let's say devs, blitz devs have actually an oversight of people activity. For example, you're moving or you're doing something, you're damaging, you're healing, or are you AFK or whatnot. They should know that so you can actually get punished. I'm very scared of that at the beginning. I think the lower MMRs are going to be filled with people actually just not really playing, or like AFKing or thinking, look, I'm going to get carried by my team. So that's a concern of mine. But of course, the higher you're going to go up, the less likely you can actually win a game by AFKing. So again, if you're playing perfectly every single round, you will win. And like I said earlier on multiple videos, but also in forum posts, people were saying like, do you feel like that there is a skill gap or a personal carry potential for RBGs? I think there is. I think you can really carry games. I'm going to talk about it on separate videos though, but because it will be very long about that. But I really think your personal skill can shine through moments that you can actually have. Like for example, on this video, you see me defending blacksmith pretty much all game long, and I always retake and take in blacksmith where I feel like I carried my part to the fullest. So blacksmith is a middle point. Again, if you take it or not, it's points that you can get on your team, but also it's control of the map. If you have middle of the map, it's easier to actually rotate to farm, to stables, to mines, and to elem, to lumber mill. So I think really you can have an impact. Now, how big is the impact in solo RBG? I think it's as big as in solo shuffle, where a healer can actually decide if someone dies or not, or a DPS that is not popping a CD while the healer is CC'd can also decide to throw the game, because one death can actually equal to the round be lost or drew if you actually have a double kill, for example. So I think people should also realize that you have that in solo shuffle already, that you don't really decide every single time, every single outcome. You can decide for a bigger part because you have CC, you have the damage, you have the healing, and you have the capacities to maybe kite. But again, you also have like sometimes a marksmanship hunter just standing still and dying because he's like a bot, like a literal bot, like someone that is actually just taking control of the PC and try to get in CR from being AFK. Which I also had it yesterday on my resto druid doing solo shuffle. I literally had a shaman bot with me. And of course, I lost most of the games because, again, as a resto druid, he can just spam purge as a bot and it works. While for me, I will have to work around and try to cyclone, but the HP pools are going lower. But anyways, that's just saying that there are concerns with carrying. I think it will be possible. Now, how is it going to be rewarded? And I think for now, it's better that everyone gets the same amount of points, depending on the MMR and the CR you have. How big should be the MMR and the CR gaps? Because in RBGs, sometimes you can have a 1700 player in a 1200 team. It will get the MMR a bit higher, but you will see some discrepancies with the CRs of every single member. That's something that is bound to happen with 8 versus 8 gameplay. You will not have everyone at the same MMR, or else the queues are going to be very long. So I think people should accept that, and that the CR gains are going to be different depending on the MMRs that you have. And I think the MMR gains should be quite inflated. Why? Because then you have like a sense of progression, but it should also be inflated towards the downside. So if you lose, you should lose a lot of MMR. If you win, you should win a lot of MMR. I think that's the better swings that you can have in the game. What you have currently with healer MMR on social is the gains are very low, and the decreases are also very low. So it can be that one day you sit at the same amount of MMR because it is just not changing too much to actually have an impact on the day that you're playing. So I think if the MMR is inflated because first and foremost the players are going to be here, I think there will be a lot of players, but also in general I think you kind of need the inflation to actually drive people to actually continue in playing and not feel like they're stagnated at one point. Again, you can also have people decrease MMR. You are not immune to bad play, but you can recover that MMR with just getting another win. So I think it should be like this. My other concern is the levers. What are we going to do with levers? People that are actually leaving with Alt F4 or disconnecting or whatever. I think you should have either a possibility to rejoin the RBG somehow, some way. Give it 30 seconds because RBGs are like 12 minutes. So if you're like leaving 30 seconds is actually very big of a difference. But I think if you have like 30 seconds to rejoin the RBG, it should be okay. But once the 30 seconds are over, you get a pretty hefty amount of CR loss. and not 150. It should be way more because it's an RBG and you're punishing already a lot of players. But you also give maybe a possibility whenever you're queuing for SOLOQ RBG to backfill. So you will have like a potential button where you can press and you can say, look, I want to join an RBG, but for some reason someone leaves. I want to be able to backfill that RBG. And the gains are going to be lower if you win, but if you lose, you should lose close to 0 MMR. So again, people are going to probably want to queue up every single time as a backfill because it has more benefits than negatives. But with the punishments that Blizzard is going to give for leavers, I hope that there will be less and less leavers at the moment and at a single moment, where then you will have a lot less backfillers. So your option to backfill will be just cosmetic at one point. So I hope it will be something like that, but it would be a very good thing because again, if your team is losing because it's 7 versus 8, it feels bad. Now that's solution number 1. Solution number 2: nobody backfills, someone leaves, they're never coming back. They should give a buff to the lower amount of players. Now, my concern is people can just bandwagon and pretty much mass report someone to make them leave the game, and that would be very terrible. But if, let's say, someone leaves or someone is AFK and you make them kick or whatever, you get a 10% buff on healing and damage and maybe health, and then that would compensate for the player that is leaving. Now, 10%, it's not the end of the world. You already see like potentially you're going to lose because you have one guy less at defending or offensively or taking a flag at Warsong Gulch. Like for example, the tank is leaving, what then? I think that should be the case. I don't think it should end the game. If someone leaves and it ends the game, it gives you so much opportunity to actually grieve the people who are inside the game and take them hostage. What I would like them to do is either backfill it or give them a significant buff that actually makes them capable to fight 7 versus 8 without feeling like you're really 7 versus 8 instead of 8 versus 8. It's very hard to give like a modifier, to be honest. If you give like a modifier to a warrior by 20% of damage, they can just like one-shot someone. The same for windwalkers, the same for destruction warlocks. But if you have a way to actually make them first and foremost disincentivize people for leaving the game, but also rewarding players that are staying to the game and trying to make them look, I know that you have a lever, but you can right now get a bonus on buff and you don't have to give up, you can still fight. And if someone leaves, by their own nature, you get like a CR, reduced CR loss, for example. Like for example, League of Legends, you have that. If someone leaves, you have a penalty loss on the CR. So for example, instead of like losing 17 CR, you would lose 13 CR on League of Legends. LP, it is called on League of Legends. So that there is something like, look, we know you lost because someone left. You still lose your CR, but you get a minus, you get a modifier on that loss. I think that could be something. Now there's also a concern about like stacking specs, stacking classes, because again, let's be honest, if you have 3 rogues in your team, the likelihood that you will lose the game is very high. Rogues are just not present on the map, so it feels like you're really underpopulated, I would say, in team fights. So I would suggest that a few classes, like for example rogues, or I think rogues are like a very fair example. I think it should be only 1 per team if there is a rogue, because I think having 2 or 3 really makes your team being a bit worse. The problem is by doing that is you're going to actually augment the queue times for rogues. I don't think it's also that fair. I don't really have a solution for that. I think a lot of people are going to cringe from this solution to have only 1 class, like for example rogue, per team, except the people that are against rogues are going to find it fantastic. But I think it's a bit cringy to say, look, we're going to limit 1 class, and I understand that, and I understand you guys from the comments that are going to comment that. So I would like to have solutions from you guys. What would you like to do, like with spec and class stacking? Do you only limit the specs to be only one per team, or do you limit the classes? Do you limit like one warrior, one DK, one mage, and go from there? I actually don't know. Because then healers, what are you going to do with healers? Because if you only have 2 resto druids, are you going to augment the queue time just because you have 2 resto druids on your team? I don't know. I don't know if it's a good idea as well. So that's why I'm actually still thinking about it. And I am concerned about class stacking and spec stacking, but I'm also not that concerned. It really depends on the balancing. If you have like one clear healer that is clearly above everyone, it's bound to happen to have like 4 resto druids, for example. Again, it's an example. It's not going to be bound to happen, by the way. Well, if it is like this and the queue times are lower, then the queue times are lower. But for mages, for example, warriors, DKs, paladins, like Retribution paladins, rogues, I don't know if it's really that bad to stack them. For example, there are a few classes where I feel like stacking them is a detriment on your team and not really a force. So for example, multiple hunters, multiple rogues. I would say also like multiple warriors is not that great either. So you have to see a compromise, and I don't know. First, I think the MMR issue and the lever issue should be bigger than the spec stacking or class stacking issue. But there are a few issues here and there. Now, what is your issue with RBGs? What do you suggest to change, for example? Don't say we want 10 versus 10, because that's not going to happen. Don't say that you want to have solo queue backfilled into the team RBG queue. That's not going to happen, and you don't wish that for yourself or for your team or for your players. You want to have a real solo queue with a duo queue. I see a lot of people actually wanting a trio queue, but where does it stop? I'm going to say I want to have a quad queue. I want to be able to full team on the solo queue. You don't want that. You want to have a limit, and the limit is duo queue with a healer to incentivize, again, healers into the RBG scene. I think that suggestion could be good for solo shuffle. The problem is you're shuffling the teams, so I think it could be a solution for the real 3s team that you can actually like duo queue and get a fill at any time. That could be a solution. But anyways, please like the video if you like the video. Again, that's a bit of a suggestion video, bit of a concern video, but overall, I want you to know that SOLOQ RBG is going to be a huge success. I think on PTR, unfortunately, you don't have enough players to test. You have a lot of PvEers that are actually just discussed by PvP. It just is what it is. I'm also discussed about PvE. I think PvE, you're playing versus no one. You're playing versus the same amount of BS or easiness. So again, I prefer to be a PvPer in general. Understand that some people would not like to PvP, but if we had more tests on PTR, we could actually test more maps, test more concerns, and try to see if we can perfect it. Right now, we cannot really do that. I think it will be for 10.2, and that's why I wish it to be out for 10.2.5, so you can have a whole bracket with a whole 4 months to actually grind that bracket, and it's going to be glorious. But anyways, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.